Hello and welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Anthony Salas, and on behalf of the American Marketing Association, we're very happy that you could join us for today's webcast sponsored by Cardinal Path and titled Programmatic Media Buying, Why It's a Game Changer and What Marketers Need to Know. As part of our continuing efforts to be the most relevant force and voice shaping marketing around the world, the AMA offers a variety of resources, training, and tools to enhance lifelong learning and provide you with valuable information and connections. If you visit ama.org, you'll see a full listing of upcoming events both in person and online, and you can click through the links to those various resources that are available to you. So at your convenience, we do encourage you to visit ama.org. And just a few quick housekeeping items to go over with you before we start today's presentation. We are recording the full presentation, and it will be made available to you soon after, so look for that coming your way. If you can join us on Twitter today, we would appreciate your engagement at hashtag Programmatic4Marketers, and that's programmatic, the number 4, and then MKTERS. So you see that currently on your screen. So feel free to send out some tweets as the presentation goes on. And if you have any questions, please use the chat feature that you see there to the left of your screen. Any technical questions you might have, you can enter in that area as well, and we'll get to those as quickly as possible. And content-related questions, we do encourage you to enter those as the presentation is going on. We will add them to our list of questions and then be addressing them at the end of the formal presentation. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers for today. We're being joined by Alan Amaro, who is the Director of Digital Marketing with Cardinal Path, and Tony Grodicelli, who is the Director of Digital Content and Analysis with Universal Music Group Nashville. And both Alan and Tony have a lot of great information and insight that they're going to be sharing with you today. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Alan to start today's presentation.
Wonderful, and thank you, Anthony. All right. Well, welcome everybody to our session this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you're dialing in from. No doubt everybody on the line has been inundated with news and articles and notes and blog posts about this ever-growing world of quote-unquote programmatic media buying. There's so many sources of information available, it really is hard to know where to start. So therefore, our aim today is to talk through the landscape, give you a much clearer perspective on not only what it is, but why it might be important for you in your marketing efforts. And as Anthony had already mentioned, please do join the conversation. If everybody can take notice of that hashtag one more time, we really do love to see folks tweeting about that and joining in on that. Now, so the whole morning is a bit of an overview. We want to start with the basics and an emergence of programmatic buying as a more dynamic and efficient means of purchasing display inventory. We're going to stroll through some of the mechanics of what exactly defines this process. And I want to give some thoughts to getting started and what is really involved at the onset of executing these programmatic campaigns. From there, we can look into how optimization really differs for this medium. And I got to say, we're really very pleased to introduce a special guest from Universal Music Group Nashville, Mr. Tony Grodicelli, who's already been introduced here, but he's going to be giving his own insights into the shape of this space, how he personally sees marketing programs shifting their digital focus, and maybe even a bit more into what the future holds for them. So Tony, thanks so much for being here, and happy to let you introduce yourself here as well real quick.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here and happy to talk to you about programmatic and what it means for us in the music industry, and specifically in country music, and how we're going forward with it. Thanks again.
Great, thank you. And then finally, I just want to come back to chat briefly about some of the potential pitfalls and issues to keep in mind as you explore a programmatic display approach. And of course, we're going to find time to feed in your questions and some polling information of our own. So most of this is going to come at the end, but I would encourage anyone to, if a question pops up, please plug it into the chat window and we will flag those up, and we'll take time at the end to address everything we possibly can. Okay, let's start with the facts. Programmatic media spending is ballooning. More and more dollars are being allocated for it, and we're really seeing a shift in focus. And why is that? Well, we're going to get there in more detail, but it really comes down to efficiency of display spending. my intention today is not to portray some, I guess, unrealistic view of the channel, but really to share our experience and how we find this valuable. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be utilizing programmatic buying to get the most bang for your buck. It's really to find the most relevant potential customers at the best price. And with any marketing channel, there's so many levers that you'll use to generate success. And the reason so many marketing teams are growing their programmatic spend is because the power and control really is starting to come back to the user in this situation. Now let's take a closer look here. You've probably seen a number of reports and articles on businesses moving their budgets towards programmatic. Large brands like Target, Kellogg's are changing their marketing tactics, and more specifically, their display advertising budgets. Traditional display marketing spend is starting to segment into alternative channels, quite often now programmatic buying. And it probably comes as no surprise that retail really is quite a leading spender here. But we really gotta start by defining this, and we can't escape this buzzword. Programmatic is everywhere. Even Jimmy Kimmel is talking about it, and as such, there's really no shortage of technical definitions of it. So I'll try to break this down as we see it. Is it automated? Is it auction-based? Is it machine learning? Well, kind of yes in all of these senses. I'd say at the end of the day, programmatic display buying is all about automating the inventory process as cleanly as possible. This enables you as a marketer to reach the most quote-unquote eligible audience. And these processes allow me to define exactly which type of ad impression I want, at what price, within what category, and so on. And why is this so important? Well, it's really all about relevancy at the end of the day, reaching that most perfect viewer through our advertising efforts. Now here's an example that I hope may help clear things up a bit better. I'd say most of us, if not all of us, are certainly familiar with Google, probably even the advertising buying process of Google AdWords, where we're using chosen keywords as a marketer to define the types of search intent to show our advertising to. We can choose geolocations, times of day, days of the week, and a whole number of different additional parameters to ensure that our ad is present in the right situation. We set the rules, and Google shows ads when the conditions are right. Well, programmatic is in some ways similar to this. We as marketers are making decisions as to when we want our advertisements to be eligible to show. We choose categories, we choose contextual guiding keywords that will help pick and choose which placements and where these placements are showing. We can choose geolocations, times of day in a very similar manner, and we choose how much we're willing to pay for that impression. And again, when all of these conditions are met, our ad shows. So it's boiling down to, again, relevancy, showing a relevant ad when these circumstances are most ideal. Now, to know this process, it'll probably help to know the way it's usually been done in the past. Traditional media buying has typically been facilitated with direct relationships, meaning direct to the actual site publisher, relationships with agencies, and handshakes. Budgets can be large. Selection criteria has really more recently grown in sophistication, and I will talk a bit more about that. Now, the rise of programmatic doesn't necessarily mean that advertisers are managing their own buys and doing this all themselves, but the selection criteria has really improved. And don't get me wrong, agencies still often manage programmatic campaigns on behalf of us as clients, but clients are starting to realize that they can eliminate a lot of the irrelevant and volume-heavy inventory placements that don't necessarily improve conversions or even click-through rates. Again, it's about efficiently buying against the type of inventory that is probably most advantageous to you. So think of it like this. There's more power back in your hands. You can be choosy, you can be particular, and the results are really starting to speak for themselves. We already mentioned that spending and allocation of budgets is shifting greater and greater towards programmatic buying. Conversion improvements, click-through rate increases and rises. This more efficient budget spending really is taking hold and starting to drive things a lot further. So in summary, why is this so important? Well, you don't want to spend money advertising to people who won't or don't want to become your customers, clearly. And you do want to get the right message to the right person at the right time. Again, it's about eliminating the waste, making sure that we are showing ads in the situations where, again, it's most advantageous to us. This is really the programmatic aim. Now, okay, on to some of the more key components. Now, much like any display media campaign, we're going to be utilizing a lot of similar pieces. First big component here is conversion pixels. Whenever you're setting a new campaign, you're going to want to establish goals that ensure success of this campaign. And with that comes setting conversion pixels that are going to be placed on whatever key pages or events that indicate the campaign drove an action. So for example, if I have a campaign geared towards driving users to the site to make some sort of a purchase, I want to make sure that my conversion pixels are placed and tagged in order to allow me to see how many purchases have been driven as a result of this. Budgets, again, we'll talk more about budgeting in just a bit, but this is really key to ensuring we can reach our audience, making sure that we have enough to serve enough of our ad impressions in order to make sure that we're visible. Creative assets will and really can include a range of types. There are clearly image ads, mobile-specific advertisements. We've got rich media opportunities, video ads, and again, as I said before, with programmatic being such a buzzword, you'll see this shift in the landscape. People will start talking about programmatic video spending, programmatic direct buying. It really comes down to what type of advertising you're serving against, what types of actual media assets, and then what's the aim at the end of the day. And then the real difference is in targeting. We are going to spend a good amount of time talking more about why this is so important. I can tell you that at Cardinal Path we feel we really look into targeting as a very, very heavily key component of programmatic because, again, in order to reach that very specific audience, everything we can do in the beginning to hone and segment our audience targeting is going to be the difference between how we start to show ads to the right user. So that's a little bit more on that in just one moment. Okay. Now let's focus on a few specifics. Like I said before, at Cardinal Path, we're a data agency first. We believe very strongly in defining success through measurement, and this is absolutely applicable here. The real key to driving improved results through programmatic is kind of twofold. One is being realistic about what you're after. So I can't stress enough that programmatic media buying is still display advertising. Click-through rates will be far lower than search media advertising. You're still going to be, in some ways, driving a lot of different ads against a very large user base. But at the same time, we really are able to hone in on a specific audience. And so that's the second piece of this. It's all about defining and segmenting that audience, doing your homework, figuring out what are the specific attributes that you're after. And so we always like to tell our clients to mine your data for clues. Start to put together a strong profile of your desired customer. Like you see here, we're able to indicate the types of specifics that compose our ideal purchaser. So for example, if you're looking at the screen, maybe I'm trying to show advertisements to males who are located on the East Coast of the United States. They fall into about $100,000 income bracket. Maybe they're more catered towards sports interests. And then what's going to happen is that as this inventory fits my criteria, I'm going to be showing my advertising to those types of inventory sites. So the power isn't really in the system buying this inventory as much as it is in making this is in making our targeting as specific as possible to really kind of put the right foot forward, if you will. So at the end of this, I'd say, no matter what, if you choose an irrelevant audience to target, you're still targeting the wrong folks. So take your time and do your homework, and I'm going to get into a little bit more about how we do that, how we look into specific information. We start to put together that customer profile and find these pockets of advantage, I'll say. Now here's where the engine really starts to take over, and by that I mean the programmatic or automated buying engine. The real-time bidding, algorithmic targeting, matching, inventory exchanges, they're going to allow you to instantaneously purchase these specific ad slots. Again, remember this is image ads, video, rich media, in-app or mobile ads as they become available. So rather than just highest bid wins, we're looking at something a bit more holistic. This is ad space available to you when it really means the most to you. And that's absolutely what we're after in this situation. Now, what about this inventory? Usually one of the first questions that we get asked, and I absolutely encourage folks to ask no matter who they're working with or whether it's an ad exchange or a programmatic vendor or something like that, is are we just buying the basement rate leftovers or the remnant inventory or unsold inventory of a lot of these site publishers that they didn't sell it at the highest price initially? Well, certainly not anymore. Ad exchanges are making more inventory available for programmatic purchase. Another real growing trend is programmatic direct inventory, where I can actually go and set a private deal to be brokered directly with the exchange. Again, giving me access to higher quality inventory, allowing me to set my targeting parameters again and ensure that I'm showing at the right time for the right situation according to that selection criteria. So again, this is all about more flexibility and more choice. It's probably an underlying current that you're starting to realize now is we really want to be able to define what it is specifically that we're after. Now, I know I just spoke about attributes, but let's focus on why this can lead to higher conversion rates. Let's say, for example, I'm a sports merchandiser, and I'm trying to build awareness of my e-commerce store. I know that a lot of my revenue is driven by males, ages 18 to 35, probably with a skew towards California and New York as the biggest states driving a lot of this volume. And then let's say we did a bit of market research to discover that a typical client makes over about $100,000 annually. And we even know what browser and device types that perform really well and drive a lot of conversion volume for us. Now this is where I dig in. All of this becomes part of my targeting. And when we talk about targeting possibilities, really has started to grow in terms of what I can pinpoint as the attributes I'm after. Most programmatic tools, whether they are self-service or driven by a specific vendor, have a laundry list of available targeting capability. All you really need to know is how fine-tuned. Inventory is categorized. And this data is coming from the publishers. It's collected, aggregated info about their user bases. So there's just so much that we know, and there's so much that we can tap into in terms of being able to target specific groups and show ads to those segmentation. Now, I just want to point a few of these advantages out. We'll look at some of the players in the space, but integrating third-party data, which one of my bullets here, about the third one down, this really opens up the door to reaching lookalike audiences based upon user behavior that's being tracked. So because of this, programmatic really becomes a powerful tool for building effective prospecting campaigns. And these prospecting campaigns are driving new customers to your site, allowing you to then remarket to these folks. So if you think about it, and maybe what some of us are doing prior to utilizing programmatic campaigns is we're blanketing a lot of hopefully like-minded users that might be interested in my products just through site selection and certain publisher groups. But we don't really know how specific those targeting attributes are. With programmatic, I fine-tune my audience. I reach hopefully a more relevant audience. And then as these folks start to visit my site through these advertisements, I'm then collecting and building lists of remarketable users that I can go back to and start to market those folks individually with other follow-up messaging and potential offers and things like that. So there's really a lot that we're able to do here. I can tell you that we at Cardinal Path, we really focus on using programmatic as a prospecting to remarketing channel. We use it to really funnel in users to go back and build those remarketing pools and reach them later. So I can't stress enough how important a lot of these integrations and third-party data really becomes in this situation. Okay, so here's where things get interesting. And I realize that this is a very involved slide, an image here. Some of us might already be interested in the Loomscape. I would absolutely encourage folks to not only check this out. This is updated regularly, but take a look at just in the world of display advertising, all of the different players and integrations and organizations involved in making this link between consumers and us as advertisers. So I'm willing to bet that since we drafted this deck, to actually going through this material, that there's a whole fleet of programmatic tools and technologies that will continue to exist or be new to market. And what I'm getting at is you have so much choice here. Agencies have this capability through self-serve platforms. Specific vendors exist to help streamline and ensure the most specific ad inventory possible. And if you want, you could even negotiate buying terms via one of the big platforms like a DoubleClick and run these buys yourself through a self-service model. It's absolutely in the cards. And I really think that it's only a matter of time before this becomes more and more user-friendly and more of us are able to really start buying against or generating and running programmatic campaigns on our own. Now, real quickly, when I think about programmatic, which is, again, I apologize for how many times we're saying the word programmatic, but I always first talk about DSPs or demand-side platforms. These are numerous. They're systematically allowing the purchase of ad inventory. It's folks like MediaMath, like I said already, Google's DoubleClick Bid Manager, Rocket Fuel. All of these operate as or with DSPs or demand-side platforms, and again allow for rule-driven inventory purchases. So the next question might be, who should I go with? Well, I think it's really up to preference. Again, some vendors make the process very, very easy, and all they require is an initial budget. They put their technology to work for you. Other tools will give you the keys, and you can get involved as you'd like in picking and choosing your segmentation, analyzing performance. I can say that there are, again, because of how saturated the market is, there really is a lot of choice. There are a lot of different partners buying against similar inventory. So I think it's less about going with a specific vendor because of the absolute particular inventory they buy, and rather picking a partner that you trust, you like what their offering is, you like the price point in terms of how much budget you need to get started with. So all that being said, Tony, I'd love to pull you back in here for a bit more of your insight into the programmatic landscape. And I think what I'd kick it off with is, why do you think programmatic has been such a huge boom?
I think that the digital landscape as a whole has been sort of stagnant within its nature in the past, I would probably say 3 to 5 years. As display media has, yes, been on the rise, and it's been the same type of display media with very small iterations on it for the past few years. And then all of a sudden, this idea of programmatic comes out, and it's now you can choose. Now you have the power to, instead of doing direct buys every time, you can choose who sees that on your direct buy. You can choose who sees that in your auction, which changes the landscape. I think a lot of this has to do with social coming to play and giving you more opportunities to do that sort of stuff and bring more value to the table. So it requires the display networks to open themselves up to these types of segmentation and targeting. For the music industry, and stop me, Alan, if you want me to talk about something specifically, but I was going to sort of segue that and how the music industry is doing it here, at least Nashville. So for those on the phone, I work for UMG, Universal Music Group Nashville, and my artists are the country artists. So specifically looking at the screen here, you're seeing David Nail, Vince Gill, Chris Stapleton, work with George Strait, Alan Jackson, Luke Bryan, a bunch of different artists, and a wide spectrum of legends to new artists. And so when you look at the music industry, when it first started, we were delivering CDs to record stores, and that's how you found your music, because you'd walk in a record store and we would be wanting people to see it when it was on the shelf. And then we started delivering them to big box retailers like Walmart and Best Buy and Target. And it was how many bodies were going through the stores were still looking at your CDs. And then we started the whole world of online. It was, okay, you have iTunes, so it's getting in those stores. And then you had streaming services, and now you have on-demand consumption. And so the idea of, what you would call impression-based marketing has sort of changed from how many people are walking to the store or walking in the door or seeing your CD to now we have to get way more targeted because people have the choice now. They have a choice to listen to your music when and where and however they want to. So it's important for us to change with that landscape, specifically when our budgets are all over the place, depending on who it may be, to get more targeted on how we do those things. And with display not changing for so many years, and I've seen people in the chat here talk about CPM versus CPC or CTR when it's so low. How do you look at going into programmatic? Cardinal Path and I have had a major conversation on that specifically on how we look at CTR and what's the value of that with programmatic. I think it's valuable still. I think that the idea of CTR and impressions being so low is the bad. And we should be looking at programmatic saying that hopefully this will fix that problem and show you that by putting different interest or segmentation around your users will bring that CTR up and bring that CPC down and actually hit your engaged users that you're looking for, that you've been trying to hit for so long. Does that sort of give you a rounded conversation there, Alan? I think I kind of jumped on a tangent.
That's great. And you know what? You kind of triggered another question, and I think I saw a question come up about, if I'm not an agency, how do I set up programmatic buying for my business? And you were kind of getting into that, and it kind of couples in with a question I had as well, which is, with so much choice, whether it's self-service or specific vendors, how do you even navigate that landscape?
Definitely, and I'm going to jump in here and also say I think it's Nacho Teca, and on Twitter asked the same question about programmatic ad buying. Are you doing it internally with brands, or are you doing it with agencies, or is there a dual effort, pros and cons of that? So our idea on programmatic buying started by running some regular remarketing and retargeting, trying it out, testing it, seeing what we do. We've been doing it for a couple of years, and it just wasn't being as successful as we would want it to be. And so with Cardinal Path, we started some conversations around Google Analytics and tagging our sites, and how do we do that, and what does it look like? And then we started conversations on advertising, and is there ways we can do advertising based on Google Analytics, which is obviously database-driven advertising. And what we were able to do now is we're able to utilize the information we're grabbing from our artists' websites and build segmentations and then automatically remarket directly to those people. So let's say someone goes to a website, maybe they've gone to a website 4 or 5 times. Maybe you're a blog, or maybe you're a brand and they're trying to find more information out about multiple pieces of your product. The idea is you can track all those different sessions from a user on your website, whether that be Adobe or Google. For this scenario, we're talking about Google. And you can start to find highly engaged segments. And then you can start to run programmatic segments. You can start to spit out segments to run programmatic advertising to those users. And what you're trying to do now is really just an A/B test to find out what highly engaged user is actually going to bring up that CTR or bring down that CPC or whatever your goal may be, whatever your KPI is. For us, we think that's a massive value prop, as previously we didn't have any of that sort of data-driven advertising that would actually allow us to do A/B testing and really find that engaged consumer, then go for it. I think it's always going to be a push and pull to find out what actually works and what doesn't, and does it taper off over time or not. Working with Cardinal Path, I think they had a great analogy at one point, and they said, our job, the previous job of display advertising or remarketing was to have a user be on a website looking at an article, and your job was to pull them away from that website onto something else that 90% of the time wasn't even relevant to what they were reading on the article. Well, now you have that opportunity to make it relevant. True programmatic is, yes, segmentation, but then in the end, it's actually automation. And so by segmenting and running A/B testing, and for us, and linking our Google Analytics and AdWords together, it allows us to actually be automated and work more efficiently with our spends. the question of whether or not you should do it yourself or work with a third party, and the person on Twitter who asked that question, I say to you guys both. You should always be looking at your data as a brand or agency. And then you should always be working with an agency at the same time. These people live, eat, and breathe this all day long just like you do. But utilizing Google Analytics, utilizing the connection with AdWords, and then if you can get to that next step, which is double-click, it allows you to even more inventory, higher inventory, and allows you to only have to use one pixel, or allows you only have to use one code base on the actual website if you're using Google Tag Manager. So for us, to answer your question, Alan, yes, I think it's highly important to have an agency. I think you can do it yourself, and if you get to a point that you can be truly automated programmatic, maybe you can step away from that agency side. But for much bigger spends, I think having an agency really helps you because it's all about testing and rechanging and testing and changing and testing and changing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really happy because you uncovered a lot of, there's some really great questions about expectations around display, and I think programmatic is a different arm of display. We're going to touch upon a few more of those at the end, but yeah, thanks so much, Tony. I think that you've really kind of opened up the door on a lot of where people's minds are and how they can start to explore a lot of these additional options, because I got to tell you, there are many, many, many options. I can go back to that other slide showing the Loom escape again, but there really are a lot of vendors out there. But we'll come back to a few more questions. There's certainly some of these in here I want to make sure we cover. So we were talking about traditional display buying earlier, and Tony's mentioned a bit of this. And I think of large advertisers making big budget deals with individual sites or display networks. So for example, I go to YouTube and I buy this homepage takeover for thousands and thousands of dollars. YouTube, you make sure that I get my 3 to 5 million ad impressions served, and hopefully this drives exposure and lift to my site and my bottom line. But when we talk to clients about budgets, often I think with programmatic, we have the benefit of doing something smaller, testing budgets, carving out a piece for a trial. And like I have here, just be wary of purchase minimums. A lot of vendors are happy to work with you and really help you drive success. So as you start to figure out, do you go direct, do you work with an agency partner, the cost of this usually bakes in some percentage of the cost of media. There's potentially other things as well, and it really runs the gamut. So I would just encourage you to explore what you're paying for and what are you getting at the end of the day. But again, most partners are really willing to work with you and get you up and running. Like I mentioned, we as Cardinal Path are a data house. We love to work through the process first and really define who we're after, a lot of what Tony was describing. So go with what the data is telling you and refine it from there. So for example, start by examining your sales flow. Determine what is driving sales or lead volume, or whatever your conversion goal is really. Here I just started digging in, and this is very simplex everybody, but I just started digging into some indicators in Google Analytics as an example. Utilize geographic reporting or actual demographic data within Google to just start to refine your segmentation. And the better tuned in you are, the better your initial segmentation can be. Examine the site activity, figure out what types of visitors are converting, look at what specific products or pages or sections of the site folks are really starting to convert at a higher rate. Use all of this information in how you go about defining the characteristics that you're going to buy against. Okay, great. Started to figure out, so at this point, we've really talked a lot about how you want to target your programmatic campaigns. Next comes a pretty important piece, which is tracking. And Tony kind of, he again opened the door up on this in discussing how UMG Nashville has gone about ensuring that they are tagged and tracked from a Google Analytics perspective in terms of mining data and better understanding their visitor flow. I'm going to split this into two sections, both of which are really important. On the left we have actual platform tagging. What I mean by this is adding conversion pixels from the vendor or the tool you're using to run the programmatic campaigns to your site. So you're working with DoubleClick. you're going to be placing double-click conversion pixels on your site. Or you're working with a vendor like Rocket Fuel, you're going to be placing Rocket Fuel conversion pixels on your site. This is fundamental to understanding how effectively these buys are driving conversion volume. And this will be measured via direct click conversions and view-through conversion. Okay, what does that mean? Well, a direct click conversion means someone saw your ad on a site that they were browsing, they clicked on it, they made a purchase or a download or something like this. That counts as a conversion. Another metric that we see a lot and that really does have a lot of importance, particularly in the display world, is a view-through conversion. This is occurring when someone is served an ad impression, meaning I'm reading the news and I see the ad there, but I don't click on it. But then later I come through and I convert anyway. This is all about intent and referring someone to your products or services based on the fact that they did see your actual ad inventory showing. So we don't talk a lot about remarketing in this webinar, but utilizing your conversion pixels also allows you to start building remarketing lists to then serve ads to later. Like I said a little while ago, we really focus on programmatic as this prospecting engine, and it's feeding our remarketing pools. We use it to fine-tune an audience, drive a bunch of people to our client sites, and then as we're doing that, we're hopefully feeding a really engaged visitor to the site and starting to build up pools of users we can then go ahead and serve ads to later. Now next, on the right side, is what Tony was really getting into, and I want to speak briefly about tagging for your analytics platform. If you're using Google Analytics, for example, you're going to want to make sure your programmatic campaigns are showing up properly in your all-up campaign reporting. So this is going to give you insight into how this display channel performs compared to other media. Maybe you're running ads through another ad network, like a Yahoo or something like that. This will allow you to see everything all within a similar view. You can compare your display channel and how it's running against your search media or against your organic search channel. All of this is really possible and all very, very important. Tony, anything else you want to add about site tagging or how a consolidated view from the analytics perspective has been helpful?
I would say just to know your landscape, bottom line. I mean, we have on our roster alone probably around 40 artists. Some of our partner labels, we have over 100 artists. And you got to think of each of those as a brand. This goes for a lot of CPG products or agencies who have a lot. Utilizing a GTM allows you to be nimble, number one, and then utilizing one platform, in this case for us, Google Analytics, really allows us to get the roll-up view and actually see the landscape of how much we actually can work with and how much data we can see. You know, you don't have to actually use or market to all of your data, but having the data actually allows you to make better decisions on what you do and choose to market to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got to apologize. I didn't include in here anything about using a tag manager to deploy all of these potential programmatic campaigns and conversion pixels, but that's a really excellent point. Tony mentioned earlier it's good to use a lot of partners. You know, test different platforms, test different vendors, see how well they can purchase programmatic inventory on your behalf. Well, guess what? It's a lot of conversion tags to add to your site. And without a tag manager or tag management system of some sort, this can be a really laborious task. So I would absolutely encourage, whether it's Google Tag Manager or something like Atelium, make sure that you're using something like this just to make your lives easier. You might be using 2 to 3 different vendors or programmatic partners. That'll make your life a whole lot easier when it comes to actually tagging up the site and setting conversion rules. So really glad you brought that up as well, Tony. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's recap. You've taken the time to understand your analytics data. You know what your programmatic campaign goals are. You figured out who you want to target to. You've carved out a bit of budget to test. Now what? Well, clearly we've got to run the campaign. And what I want to talk a little bit about now is optimization, because this is where setting your initial audience is one thing, but refining based on data coming in is probably even more important after things get going. So we're going to start optimizing campaign performance based upon a number of factors. Here's what we look at, and this is not in any particular order, but these are just big chunks of things that we focus in on, and I would encourage you to do the same. Let's start with creative. There are a number of ad sizes and ad types that you will have the ability to serve, and all of which are going to behave differently. But your ad messaging will start to lose its luster after a few weeks, potentially. I don't want to say that's always the case, but it certainly has the ability to kind of overstay its welcome, and you're going to want to keep this fresh. So we typically look to refresh advertising creative about once a month, unless we see indicators that things need to change earlier, or if things are performing well, of course we'll continue to run that advertising creative. Click-through rate, low conversions really help to warn us. And so what do we do about it? Try rotating your imaging, your call to action. Tony was talking about A/B testing different variations against each other in the same size ad slot. There's a number of best practices to find related to advertising creative. Utilize a strong creative partner in helping you to rotate these things in. Didn't even mention this yet. There is a whole slew of vendors popping up that focus completely on creative optimization, plugging into serving ads based on systematic rotation of creative. And that too can be very powerful in improving your click-through rates, improving your conversion rates. Next, let's look at where the ads are serving. Most programmatic campaigns are serving ads when your buying criteria is met. There are hundreds of thousands of individual sites possibly serving your ad, but we're really interested in higher level picture here. Start to examine locations that are performing well, and by that I mean physical locations. Adjust the contextual keywords that you're using to determine site placements, so allowing these buying engines to select websites and ad slots based on these contextual keywords. Most tools will allow for deep reporting detail into ad scheduling, time of the day, day of the week, and so on. Again, all of these things are going to help you refine when and where ads are served, all of which, again, helps you target a more relevant customer. So you're really never, that whole process never really ends. You're consistently refining that. So finally, let's just think about inventory exclusions. Are there certain categories of sites just not working well? You will have the opportunity to exclude them. Consider refining your buying criteria. Perhaps you need to adjust your targeted bid. All of these things are going to be consistent and consistently part of your optimization process, and absolutely something that you're going to have to focus a lot on. Okay, we are at a point where we'd love to pop a bit of a poll question up for everybody. So what we found interesting is just, as you can see here, how much of your display budget is going towards programmatic advertising. And this is where we can kind of start to get a little bit of a real world example based on the folks on this call of what's really happening here. There's so much buzz about programmatic. Everybody's talking about all of these dollars, $15 billion in 2015, going towards programmatic buying. But at the end of the day, what does that really amount to? And I'm just taking a pop at I'll give everybody a moment to answer here, but very much interested in seeing what's going. It looks like, Anthony, if you don't mind serving up the final response in just a moment. But from what I'm seeing, it looks like a lot of us are, putting about somewhere between 0 to 20% of our budget into programmatic. And I'd say that really does kind of that is quite consistent with how the market has been trending. Now this will absolutely grow. I think projections are to grow to about 1/3 of display spending in the very short term here. But again, for all this talk about it, the reality still shows that this is still a small segment of the market, and something to keep in mind as you allocate budgets and figure out how well it'll work for you. And thank you everybody for completing that for me. All right, so we're kind of getting towards the end here. A few things to look out for. Truth be told, ad fraud. This could, and in plenty of situations has been, its very own webinar or series of webinars or gigantic topic. There are so many emerging types of ad fraud that it really sometimes seems like dark days ahead. Things like crowdsourcing, in which users are recruited and paid to view articles and drive up page views. Incentivized networks where individuals gain points. I'm talking like a reward point to read articles or click on ads. There, of course, we're all familiar. There's computer malware, something that we're probably all pretty used to. Automated bots are driving seemingly random clicks and view behavior to sites to boost impressions and up your bill. There's retargeting fraud, also works in which a bot mimics human behavior for a specific segment or type of product, effectively driving up cost per thousand or CPM. Mobile simulators, these are mimicking or replicating in-app experiences and allow bots to click and perform fraud on mobile ads. I mean, this is a small percentage of the list. Ad fraud is not my specialty, and this is just a small piece of what is going on. So what do you do? Well, there's a number of resources, including the IAB, which will help you educate, can help educate you and make us all aware of how to reduce ad fraud, at least aware of what's going on. Technologies themselves need to be really ahead of the game here as well to help lower this growing trend, and I think they absolutely are, and absolutely looking into ways to mitigate this. So just to kind of think about moving forward, how can you get started? What should we be looking out for? I'd say get started, as we've said over and over again, just in this brief webinar, looking at your data. Do you have a strong play? Before you start thinking about segmenting and targeting specific audiences, look at where you might have an angle. Do you have a particular demographic or a geographic location that seems to perform better than others? Use that. Start to use that and hone in and potentially drive advertising dollars towards those segments. Consider programmatic as a feeder channel to your remarketing pools. In fact, I think this is a really great way to do it. Again, we'll talk about costs. I know some folks have asked questions about how much this costs to do, but it can be a cheaper way or cheaper alternative to reach an effective audience and start to build those retargeting pools as we talked about earlier. And then the last thing here really is to measure everything. Like I said before, we're a data house. We don't do anything for a client unless we're able to show what the end result was, whether this dollar spent drove this many impressions and as a result this many visits to the site resulting in X number of conversions at such and such a cost. This is paramount. I would absolutely encourage everyone to keep that in mind as you get started in this. So that being said, we've got about 9 to 10 minutes here left at the end. I want to make sure that we get around to answering some of these questions. But even there, thank you so much for spending this much time with us. And Anthony, I think we'll now focus in on some questions.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Alan. And Tony, thank you as well. And we do have a number of questions that have come in. There's been a lot of great interest both on here as well as on our Twitter feeds. So thanks to everyone who has participated in both of these areas. If you do still have a question, though, make sure to get it into the chat area here on the platform so we can add it to the list and get to as many as time allows. So with that, go ahead and take our first question here, and I'm going to kind of touch on this because we've had a number of people kind of asking the same type of question, if you will, and it is basically how easy is this for me to tackle as a self-starter? We had one individual that says he's currently using Google, Facebook, and Twitter for all his online buying. So, again, just that general question is, I'm on my own with this. How do I get started? How easy is it?
Really great question. There are, it really comes down to how we want to define this. Like we said before, there's a number of partners that will manage this on your behalf. There's a number of agencies that will buy in this fashion on your behalf. And again, I just want to jump back to the idea that that programmatic is, like Tony was mentioning, it's automation of this buying process. So it's the automation of it, and therefore it's the ability to kind of really pick and choose the criteria you're after. Rather than, let's say I go to an advertising network and I say, I just want to spend $10,000 and I want to reach people interested in health and fitness. Well, programmatic allows us to really refine this. So what I'd say is, how easy is it? Again, utilize a partner if you'd like. There's a number of those, and I know there's just a number of different partners that will allow you to do this. Agencies will help set up and buy against particular exchanges on your behalf in the exact same way. So it, without shedding too much detail, it really can be as simple as finding a partner that provides that service, calling them up, and getting started with what's called an insertion order or a buy order that will allow them to segment on your behalf.
All right, great. Thank you, Alan. Appreciate that. Next question here, kind of a two-parter it looks like. So first part is, how can I more specifically target my ads? And then secondly, how do the tools allow me to do this?
And I'm happy to jump on that one as well. So how can I specifically target my ads? Again, it's hard to show this without physically showing you what some of these tools allow for, but you're physically going in and you're able to say, okay, I want to reach a targeted audience between this age group that are skewed towards this particular demographic. I can look at pools of cookied users, meaning folks that have been pixeled, that we know their online activity is geared more towards let's say in-market shoppers, folks that have visited a lot of shopping carts but not purchased. I can look at all sorts of third-party data that is integrated into these tools that will allow me to show an ad against those cookied users. And then let me see the second part of that question again, Anthony. What was the second part of it?
Yeah, the second part is just how do the tools allow me to do this?
Yeah, again, it's I hate to say it, sometimes it's quite simply point and click. And let's say there's 10 to 15 different criteria at which you can set your targeting. If any of us are familiar with using Google AdWords, for example, somebody had posted a question about the Google Display Network. You really are able to set your settings and your parameters in a very similar way.
All right, great. Thank you for that. Next question we have here for you is, since CTR is going to be low, what is the right criteria to utilize in order to determine success?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely, Tony.
I could just give an input on it because I think that the right criteria to utilize for your determine success is going to be different for every project and every company you work with, and also every manager. You have some agencies or some managers you work with that are all about impressions. That's all they care about. Some are about CPM, CPC, CTR, every three-letter acronym you can think of. Every boss you're going to have is going to have a different metric of KPI, and then there's going to be your metric or your company's metric of KPI. So I don't think there's a direct answer to that one, to be 100% honest. But for, I would say us and what we do, I think it's a push and pull between CTR and CPC. That's what's right for our business. I'm not going to say it's right for your business, but looking at, you know what your original benchmarks are with remarketing and retargeting. You know what your original benchmarks are with display advertising. So if you're going to be getting into the world of programmatic, which is supposed to be more targeted, and I think this is why Alan and I got a little close here actually with doing this this webinar. Is I actually brought this to Alan as a big thing of like, hey, we know what we're doing already here previously, and now we're looking at getting into programmatic. I'm expecting programmatic to perform better than anything else, and than what we've done previously, and I don't expect anything less than that. Because if it doesn't perform better, then why wouldn't I go back to what I was originally doing? Did I sort of answer the question, Alan? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. I had a computer science professor who, no matter what question you asked him, he'd always say it depends. And with CTR, you're absolutely right. I don't want to mix display and programmatic being this beautifully different scenario where CTR numbers are just through the roof. It still very much is serving a lot of ad impressions to a lot of folks that may not be, on the lookout for your ad. So CTR, while it will be lower than something like a search marketing effort, Tony mentioned this, benchmarking, whether it's against yourself and looking at marginal improvements from there, or benchmarking against the industry. And there's a number of tools. DoubleClick Google, for example, they will give you insight into this that will let you kind of see how you might be doing against some of these other industry leaders.
And again, a number of people have kind of been asking, kind of in the range of like, industry specific or how this all relates to B&B. So kind of pulling questions together here, if you will. One of the questions is, are there specific industries that programmatic buying is better or worse for? So can you just expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, I'll go real quick, and Tony would love your input as well. We showed a slide at kind of early in the beginning showing that, well, whether better or worse, retail certainly is a huge spender in the space. I think that us as an agency and handling this for other clients, we've been seeing success clearly in e-commerce and retail type endeavors. I'd say as well as we've been using B2B specifically, like I was talking earlier about that feeding remarketing pool type of strategy. So we've been using it to build awareness and drive intention to the site, and then going back and messaging those folks later. So this has been a more cost-effective way to do that. Tony, would love your input as well.
Yeah, so I would say, and you're going to hate this response, is it depends. It goes back to the CTR question of, what's your goal, what's your end result? Bottom line, I think it is better for anybody. That's my opinion. Your idea, your most of the time your goal in advertising is to get the word out about something, whether that is a new product, a new album, a white paper, whatever it may be. Your goal is to get someone to see something, and then hopefully take an action. Sometimes it's just an impression, but that impression is supposed to go to an action or give that person a feeling. So I would think if you are trying to reach a certain market, programmatic is the right thing to do regardless. If you're trying to do just a widespread, I don't care who sees it, I just need them to see it, you may not need programmatic. It may not be right for you. But if you're like Alan said, you're an e-commerce company or somebody who really drives on results-driven performance, by far programmatic is the way to go. Segment your audience, find that audience, and go for it, and use this tool to do that.
All right, gentlemen, I think we've got time for one more question here. Next one is, what is the difference between a trading desk and an ad exchange?
No, great question. And given all the blurry lines in the industry, it's a really great one. Basically, put it this way, trading desks are organizations that will buy media through an ad exchange. So you can think of them as kind of more of the broker. Although a lot of trading desks now they can kind of serve as your programmatic partner. They have the ability to plug into a number of different ad exchanges that offer up this inventory, and they will go ahead and set criteria and buy those ad impressions on your behalf.
Excellent. Thank you. And as I said, unfortunately, that's going to have to be our last question. But Alan and Tony, on behalf of the audience, I want to thank you both for putting all this together and for sharing this hour with us. It was a lot of great information, and really appreciate you both being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Anthony. Our pleasure.
And just a couple of quick reminders to everyone as we conclude today's webcast. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are recording this full presentation. All of this is going to be shared with you very soon, so look for an email coming your way so you can go back and revisit all this great information at your convenience. To those of you that were on Twitter, as I mentioned earlier as well, there was a lot of really good sharing still going on right now, looking over at the feed. So thank you so much for all that great participation there. If you weren't able to participate there, you can still go post-webcast. Again, today's hashtag was programmatic4, and that being the number 4, and then marketers, MKTERS. So please do so. Here in just a moment, we're going to redirect you to a post-webcast survey page that we Hope that you'll take a moment or two and just give us a little bit of feedback on today's webcast, in addition to letting us know what other topics you want to see presented on future AMA webcasts. So it really helps us make sure that our programming is meeting your needs, so we appreciate your help with that. And in closing, I want to extend a big thank you to Cardinal Path for sponsoring today's webcast, as well as to ReadyTalk for providing the platform that we used. And if you'd like to learn more about ReadyTalk and their services, you can go to readytalk.com/AMA. Last, of course, I want to thank you, the audience, for sharing an hour from your busy day with us. We certainly hope you found this information helpful, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon on another AMA Thought Leader webcast. That does end our presentation for today. Thanks again for joining, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.